Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A pleasure to have you both here with us. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction to this amazing film. What can audiences expect when they watch Causeway?
Oh my goodness. This question for you, sister.
What can audiences expect? An intimate character study. A story about attempting to cope, attempting to connect, to live with and through trauma, and trying to begin again.
And of course you've had lots of experience in theatre and TV, but moving into the film world, why was this the story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, well, I first read the original draft of this script now almost over 3 years ago. I'm not a veteran. I'm not a member of the U.S. Armed Forces, but I was disarmed by a feeling of recognition when I read this script, how connected I felt to this character's inner life, by her grief, her feelings of disassociation from herself, from a place that she should know best. And I was also struck by the kind of care and patience and attention to detail that characterized the material from the outset. That felt unique to me and drew me in.
And certainly it feels like a fresh story to tell. Maybe we've seen films about like veterans returning. We're seeing more and more films that do focus on female experience of trauma. But this very particular story does feel like something new, and there's a quietness to it, which I think really captures perhaps that sometimes it's not kind of so much drama involved in going through this process, but something, it just takes time. And was that an important thing to capture for you?
Very much so. I think our struggles with trauma, they can take different forms. And I think the opportunity to try to look at both of these characters' stories, both Jen's character and Brian Tyree Henry's characters, with a kind of sensitivity, felt appropriate to me, and hopefully to create a kind of invitation to patience in the experience of the film also appealed to me very deeply.
And also, I think the chance to sort of subvert the tropes of the PTSD genre was very exciting. Because I think typically when you're dealing with these ideas, you're sort of watching people cope in a more external way. And I don't know that's always how people cope. I think it was a special opportunity to demonstrate that a lot of healing can happen internally and pain can exist internally, and I don't think we've seen a lot of films that showcase that.
And I just love the dynamic between these two characters, which, again, it's not just centering around a kind of a romance.
Yeah.
But this kind of the friendship, and they both kind of can connect to each other and open up to each other in a way that they can't with anyone else in their own lives. And of course, Jennifer and Brian just play off against each other perfectly and really nailed the dialogue. So how did you cast them and how did you work with them to achieve your vision?
Well, the story of making this film, for me, it really begins with Jen and Justine. I was sent that original script over 3 years ago, and only a few weeks after I'd read it, I'd heard that Jen had also read it and had a similar response. And then she and I went out for dinner, and the alignment between us was so apparent immediately, with great exhilarated exuberance. And we were only in production a few months later. With regard to Brian, and our reaching out to Brian came not long after that first encounter as well. I've known Brian since I was 19. So he is an old friend. I was an undergrad when he was in drama school. And so I have known for a long time that Brian is an actor of such singular depth and magnetism, humanity, sensitivity, as an actor and as a person. So reading the script, he was the first person I thought of. And then to see Jen and Brian connect so effortlessly, it was instantaneous, and I think very, very exciting for everyone involved to see the immediacy and the possibilities in that chemistry.
Just the kind of coming to the look and feel of the film, it just feels very stripped back, and even in the locations, they're kind of quite everyday, but it seems to allow even things that aren't spoken, and to kind of seep through the screen. So maybe you can talk a bit about the way you wanted to look and feel, and the palette, and kind of the stillness that you create.
Sure. I love the way you just described it. Thanks. I'm so glad that you saw that or felt that. I had the unbelievable privilege of working with a tremendously gifted cinematographer, Diego Garcia, on this film, and also legendary production designer, Jack Fisk. And those collaborations were instrumental and revelatory and transformative for me creatively. I think part of what informed the natural chemistry between me, Diego, and Jack is that I think both of them have such an astute sensitivity to the ways in which a deceptively simple frame, carefully composed, can in fact contain an enormous amount of emotional and psychological information. And I think we talked at great length about how to take care of these characters with sensitivity, and how to sort of allow what might appear to be a more objective cinematography to actually contain a great deal of subjective information. I think both Diego and Jack just have a tremendous acute facility with the nuances of how frame composition can unlock that.
And what do you hope people take away from the film? And I just feel like Jennifer does have a particular aptitude for capturing these kind of female characters that have this tough exterior, but there's a lot going on underneath. And it just feels great that there seems more and more opportunities to see those sort of female characters on screen. And what do you hope people take away from this film in particular?
Oh my gosh, so many things. It's so hard to distill. That's always a tough question. I mean, I think that there's no one way to cope. Sort of like I said earlier, that healing isn't linear. That you also can't perfectly resolve your healing. Like, one of my favorite parts about this film is that we don't end, there's not this sort of like perfectly rewarding resolution to the story, which I think is what we all feel in life. Sometimes it's tough when you see a movie like that. You can't relate to that, you know? So I appreciate that. And also I think, my gosh, there's something timeless about just the human desire to connect. And I think at the end of the day, we can talk thematically about this for days, but for me, that's the bottom line. I think people finding consolation in each other, and especially in this sort of post-COVID culture where we've all been so insulated for so long, I think we are longing for connection more than ever. So I hope people can relate to that and find some kind of solace in the story.
I love everything you said. And I guess I would just add, specifically, I certainly hope that any service members or veterans who see this film might see some kernel of truth reflected back to them, that they recognize, and that something about seeing that might prove useful. And then broadly, dittoing everything you said. And I guess if there's anything to add, a hope that the film's approach to its subject matter can function as a kind of invitation to patience.
See, I think I'm out of time, but thank you so much for
Thank you
sharing
so
all that
much.
with me.